The Labour leader's on a two-day visit to Northern Ireland. He's been speaking to our political editor, Mark Devenport, who asked him what he'd do if he was Prime Minister and a border poll was called.
It's within the terms of the Good Friday Agreement that such a poll could be held if there was a willingness to do so. And I think then at that point you don't stand in its way. But it is within the terms of the Good Friday Agreement, and I think the UK government should be neutral in that respect.
So you would stay neutral because, of course, when there was an independence referendum in Scotland, David Cameron was very much campaigning for Scotland to stay in the UK. That would be a different approach from you.
I think there has to be a decision within the terms of the Good Friday Agreement. But we're dealing with sort of conjectures here, which were quite a long way off from any of this. And I'm not surprised the question came up, but it's not going to happen tomorrow. But
Downing Street with Prime Minister Jeremy Corbyn, and it will be neutral in such a campaign.
We will be ensuring the Good Friday Agreement is carried out to the letter.
I mean, the reason I ask that is that, of course, some unionists feel that you are not neutral, and they see your latest suggestion of the British-Irish Intergovernmental Conference as once again leaning towards nationalism, because they have rejected that. They've said it's a talking shop, it's something that is supported by Sinn Féin and the SDLP.
The British-Irish governments met many times during the last impasse in Stormont and helped to ease the impasse forward to re-establishment of Stormont, and it seems to me a sensible way forward. After all, one of the underpinning pillars of the Good Friday Agreement is the relationship between the UK and the Irish government, so it seems to me a British-Irish government conference is a good idea. Surely we need to get Stormont up and running. Let's not keep looking for excuses not to do it. Let's look for reasons to do it.
Do you think in the context of British-Irish relations and Brexit, that British-Irish relations have been allowed to become damaged by Brexit?
If we pursue Brexit, which ends up with a hard border between the Republic and Northern Ireland, then quite clearly those relations are severely damaged. A lot of Irish trade is with the UK. Britain is obviously a very important trading partner with Ireland. There's massive numbers of Irish people living in Britain. There is a common travel area, which of course would be unaffected by any of this. But I do think those relations will be damaged unless we pursue a Brexit which does give us a customs union which would guarantee tariff-free trade.
Of course, you say you want to maintain an open border as a symbol of peace, but your critics, for instance Owen Smith, who you sacked from the Northern Ireland job, say that the only way to maintain this open border will be to stay within the EU's customs union, within the EU single market, and to turn the whole Brexit tanker around.
We would not be members of the EU, therefore we're not members of any two EU institutions. Therefore, what we've suggested is a customs union which guarantees that trade and access to the single market, because the alternative is what? To set up World Trade Organization rules for trade, which would be tariffs, is what? To do a deal with the United States to import low-quality regulations on environment, trade and workers' rights, and we would lead to an economic decline as a result of that.
But isn't your proposal as much of a fudge as the government's? There's no sense from the EU at the moment that they believe it will meet their bottom line.
It's not a fudge, it's a practical proposal in order to maintain what is an important trading relationship both for the EU and for Britain. We have a lot of manufacturing industry that relies on exports to Europe. We have supply chains that run all across the continent that supply in the Republic of Ireland, in Northern Ireland and all across the rest of the UK.
You mentioned in your speech same-sex marriage. If you can't get Stormont back, would a future Labour government push through same-sex marriage in Northern Ireland?
Our first preference is to get Stormont back, and Stormont did indeed vote for same-sex marriage, but there was then effectively delayed by a manoeuvre by the DUP at that time. There's clearly a will across Northern Ireland and within all the parties of Northern Ireland for same-sex marriage to be legislated for. Conor McGinn has put forward a private member's bill which would have difficulty being passed because private members' bills always face difficulty. But I don't want to go down that road. I want it to be legislated for in Stormont, but I do support it.
Mr. Corbyn, thanks very much.